The lifeboat is used to meet the infrequent supply ship as it passes by en route from New Zealand to the Panama Canal, and for their annual expeditions to remote Henderson Island. Beyond the reach of aircraft, the Pitcairners are as isolated now as the Bounty mutineers 2 centuries ago. Henderson, the very un-Polynesian name for this uninhabited island, is a bird's paradise. Pandanus trees along the beach shelter white-footed fairy terns, a race unique to the remote Pitcairn group of islands. The single egg, laid on a bare branch, is incubated in turn by each parent bird. It'll be 4 weeks before the chick is ready to hatch. Henderson lies just outside the tropics and has no rich coral lagoon. The birds here have to fish in the open ocean. When rearing an offspring, there is a fine line between success and failure. Grooming each other reinforces the vital bond between them. They are partners for life. Inland, a forest of miro trees is home to the Henderson reed warbler. The island supports around 7,000 pairs of the species, uniquely evolved on this island. There is great competition for territory and nest sites. This juvenile from the previous season helps to rear another brood. Although it is not related to the parents or the chicks which it feeds, the young bird's efforts will be well rewarded. As a sitting tenant, it is well placed to inherit this valuable corner of island real estate, and with it, a chance one day to raise a family of its own. It is from this miro forest that the Pitcairners harvest timber for their carvings. The yearly visit lasts no more than a day or two, and has little lasting impact on the island's wildlife. Like the island of Rarotonga, Henderson is home to its own unique fruit dove. The bird has evolved a partnership with this Mycenae tree, another uniquely Henderson species. The tree provides nutritious berries, the seeds of which the dove scatters across the island, to mutual benefit. By comparison with mainland fruit doves, the Henderson breed is a poor flyer. The birds prefer to walk or clamber through the forest. On a small windswept island like this, birds that keep their feet firmly anchored have the least chance of being blown out to sea. Here, natural selection favors those that hop and flutter, and not those that fly. On this isolated island, the fruit dove has given up mobility in exchange for security. On Henderson, the survival game is played to different rules. With few predators, Henderson is also a paradise for insects. The tender leaves of the silverbark Pisonia trees are often plagued by the larvae of an island moth. The caterpillars rampage unchecked across the island, stripping the trees of their leaves. Replete, the caterpillars abseil down to the forest floor, where they transform into adult moths. Wherever the plague has laid bare the branches, sunlight beams down through the canopy, rejuvenating other plant life on the forest floor. The island rat was brought here long ago by Polynesian voyagers who valued its flesh as food. They also brought pandanus nuts, from which they made a kind of flour. By smell, the rats hunt out the fallen fruits, also a favourite of the hermit crabs which infest every corner of the island. In the competition for this succulent prize, the rats have speed and cunning on their side, but the crabs' massive claws and thick armour give them the edge in close combat. The crabs have another great advantage. Throughout their lives, they never stop growing. The largest use coconut shells as mobile homes. With no natural enemies, these giant crustaceans live to a great age, plundering the island's forest in search of food. Carrion is their favourite delicacy. Seabird chicks fallen from their nests become helpless victims. In the natural economy of the island, nothing goes to waste. For the fairy terns, marauding crabs are just one of the hazards of island life. Now that their chick has hatched, the parents must satisfy their offspring's voracious appetite for fish. It is a task which takes all the energies of both birds for several weeks, each day, from dawn to dusk. In the real world of island life, there are inevitably winners and losers. That is the tragedy of paradise. Without its mate, the hapless single parent has little chance of meeting its offspring's growing demands for food. On a tropical island with a rich lagoon, there would be a chance of survival. But here on Henderson, the simple saga of life and death is more apparent. The west and south coasts of Henderson are guarded by steep, undercut cliffs. Here, ocean swells have blasted limestone rock, creating caves. The debris scattered on the floor of this cliff-top cave was not thrown here by wave action. It is the remains of a human occupation, which lasted at least 700 years. Fishhooks, carved from mother-of-pearl, show that these first Polynesians were fishermen, but discarded bones show they also hunted birds for food. Scattered across the cave floor are remains of a flightless, dodo-like pigeon, which in time was eaten to extinction. Yet one flightless bird survived against all odds: the Henderson rail. Better known to pitcairners as the chicken bird, this dapper little species has the distinction of being the sole surviving flightless bird in the whole of eastern Polynesia. Although flightless now, the ancestors of Henderson's chicken bird must once have flown here from another island. Like the island's fruit dove, the power of flight then became a hindrance to survival. To become totally flightless takes many generations, but now these birds are marooned forever. Their fate is inextricably linked to that of their adopted island home. More than any other of this island's extraordinary inhabitants, Henderson's chicken bird has irreversibly burnt its boats. Beyond the Pitcairn Islands, 4,000 miles of open ocean stretches eastwards to the coast of South America. 1,000 years before Columbus ventured across the Atlantic, Polynesian voyagers had discovered and settled the only habitable island in this, the remotest part of the Pacific. It marks the most easterly corner of the Polynesian Triangle. Easter Island is a place of mystery and intrigue. Here, in splendid isolation, Polynesian art and religion flowered as nowhere else. Long ago, Easter Island rose from the sea. Its volcanic craters were once covered in lush forest. Its temperate climate and rich soil made it habitable for the people who discovered and tamed this wild terrain. Fire was the key to clearing land for crops and villages. Native birds, including a flightless rail related to the chicken bird of Henderson, were easy prey and soon became extinct. As the population expanded, a ruling class arose. Their authority came from the power of ancestral spirits, embodied as mighty statues, the Moai. With crude stone tools, the soft volcanic rock of the sacred quarry was fashioned into monumental works of art. By an extraordinary system of ropes and posts, the islanders manhandled the giant statues across the rocky landscape. As more statues were completed, more trees were felled to create levers and rollers. In time, the forest was consumed. At their final destination, on the Ahu platform of chiefly tombs, the Moai were brought to life. Fitted with eyes fashioned from white coral, they became the island's living faces, to watch like sentinels over the lives of their creators. Once the last tree had been felled, the sacred quarry was doomed. Without the means to move them, the statues were abandoned. Obsessed by their statue-building cult, generations of islanders had neglected the health of their land. With no trees to protect the soil, crops began to fail. Hungry people died. The island entered an age of darkness. Tribe rose against tribe. A civil war ignited this isolated speck of land. With no timber to build boats, there was no escape from this tiny island. The people were marooned in a hell of their own making. No other civilization on Earth has so effectively burnt its boats, nor so dramatically caused its own extinction. Today, the sightless Moai and